In 1338, Ambrogio Lorenzetti, an Italian Renaissance painter, created a series of frescoes known as the Allegory of Good and Bad Government. The paintings were designed to remind the 9 magistrates of Siena of just how much was at stake as they made their decisions.
Understanding the importance of good public governance for the preservation of individual liberties and the development of general well-being is at the core of OECD, its members and partners.
Let's look at some examples. Access to user-friendly administrative services, such as personal documents or construction permits, saves time for citizens and makes achievement of their personal goals simpler. High-quality, evidence-based, and inclusive policies and laws without unnecessary administrative burden create a friendly environment for business and lower costs. Good planning and value for money in public procurement leads to more efficient use of public budgets and makes it possible to lower taxes for everyone. Endeavors to improve public governance systems are a fundamental part of the OECD's mission. The Sigma program is a part of these endeavors. Sigma was established on the 25th of May, 1992. It is a joint initiative of the OECD and the EU, principally financed by the EU. Thanks to this successful partnership of 2 organizations with shared views on public governance, it has been fulfilling its mandate since that day. Sigma's mission is to support the EU enlargement and neighborhood countries in their reforms of public administration. So far, it has accompanied 11 countries on their path to the EU membership. 8 of these countries are now also members of the OECD, and 3 others are in the process of accession discussions. Fulfilling standards of good public governance is among fundamental requirements for membership of both organizations. Currently, Sigma is working with 1 OECD member, Turkey, as well as the Western Balkan public administrations, Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Kosovo, Montenegro, Republic of North Macedonia, and Serbia. We also work with beneficiaries in the Eastern Partnership, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine, and the Southern Neighborhood, Algeria, Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, Morocco, Palestinian Authority, and Tunisia.
OECD and EU member states share a strong common interest to preserve and boost stability and security in these regions, as well as to enhance trade and economic cooperation. Public governance is a key element in this.
Building better public administration is fundamental for the European Union's neighborhood and enlargement policies. But reforming and improving a country's civil service is never easy. The Sigma program helps us understand what good administration is and guides our partners and us on how to build a civil service that serves citizens with professionalism and integrity.
The OECD and the EU share the core values of democracy, individual liberty, rule of law, and free market economy. They also share views on what good public governance entails in practice. Through its hands-on cooperation with governments, Sigma has established long-lasting partnerships and has become a key reference for public administration reforms. It assesses, advises, and assists countries on their road to better public administration.
Sigma is unique because it brings together OECD and EU expertise in public governance, using experts and practitioners with their public governance system, combined also with local experience, working with people with experience from their partners' governments. Its data, its recommendations, findings are extremely both governmental and non-governmental, because it actually helps us bring and create and for reforms.
To further help, Sigma developed the Principles of Public Administration, which is a comprehensive set of standards expressing the values and behaviors that citizens and businesses expect from a modern public administration.
Principles are also a tool for monitoring and assessing the state of play and progress of the quality of national public administration systems. They draw on shared OECD and EU values, OECD recommendations, EU acquis, and good practices of OECD and EU member states.
The principles include standards on evidence-based and inclusive policymaking, merit-based and professional civil service, openness, transparency, and accountability, effective protection of citizens' rights, user-centric service delivery, and sound public financial management.
Continual support from both the OECD and EU and close cooperation with our partners has enabled Sigma to establish a credible base of data and evidence on public administration systems in partner countries, which is accessible to all.
The world is changing, and governments are facing many challenges today, including climate change, impacts of the pandemic, the need for rapid and effective digital transformation, as well as threats to fundamental values, security, freedom, and democracy. Sigma is well prepared to keep playing its role in this context by supporting the partners in further advancing public governance.
Доброго ранку всім, шановні колеги. Будемо починати у 2 хвилини. Дякую.
Я, значит, водички добавлю в чайник просто. Так.
Шановні колеги, будемо починати. Dear colleagues, let us start the day 2 of the meeting so that we can actually move forward and have another day of hopefully interesting and relevant information for you in terms of the principles of public administration, the methodology behind it, and all of the different tools on how we actually do all things and all assessments. But before we go deep into these issues, it would be very good if Natalia Alyoshina, whom I'm seeing as participant, could give us some introductory remarks for day 2 and also officially start the meeting. Natalia, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Martins. Dear colleagues, Окей. Шановні колеги, шановні пані і панове, сьогодні ми з вами продовжимо ще ближче знайомитися з підходами програми Сігма до оцінювання. Чому воно важливо, особливо зараз в процесі нашої європейської інтеграції? І фактично вчорашній день продемонстрував неабияку зацікавленість, той аншлаг, який був, і в залі очікувань були люди, які не змогли потрапити. Це ще раз свідчення того, що є зацікавленість і є інтерес. Адже в наших умовах, де ми зараз є, статус кандидата на вступ до Європейського Союзу для нас це поштовх для того, щоб ми далі продовжували впроваджувати європейські стандарти держуправління. І кожен день фактично ми працюємо з вами над виконанням порядку денного європейської інтеграції. Ми, до речі, відверто, ми вклали багато сил, ми багато чого зробили для того, щоб вже реалізовані оці 70% реалізованих реформ, це наші зобов'язання, які ми брали на себе про асоціацію, відповідно до асоціації, угоди про асоціацію. Вважаю, ще у нас багато чого попереду. Не будемо складати рук, і не дивлячись на те, що і війна сьогодні в країні заважає продовженню багатьох наших проєктів, і перед нами ще висуває багато викликів. Перед кожним із нас ми дійсно маємо сьогодні можливість це змінити. Якщо ми зараз змарнуємо цю можливість, це означає, що ми, не дай Боже, може таке статися. Одним словом, ми не будемо втрачати можливості і будемо сьогодні все заплановане реалізовувати. Навіть вчора прес-конференція, яка відбулася, я змушена була залишити наприкінці захід. Виключіть, будь ласка, мікрофон, хто заважає. То хочу підкреслити, що зараз ми займаємося вже на випередження, готуємо людей на деокуповані території, тобто програми навчальні, програми, готуються постанови, проекти постанов, і перша постанова вже пішла, ви знаєте, постанова 391 про оплату праці на деокупованих територіях. Зараз потрібні люди, дійсно, які вони мають бути, які мають бути вимоги сьогодні, чому ми маємо їх готувати. Тобто, ще раз підкреслюю, що в порівнянні з тим, що на нас очікує, накладається іще, крім наших намірів щодо вступу до Європейського Союзу, разом з тим є наше сьогодення, і це ще один виклик, і у нас в умовах цієї невизначеності, складності дуже складно. Разом з тим, ми всі знаємо вже зараз, над чим будемо працювати, які рішення будемо ухвалювати. Проте нам потрібне єдине бачення нашої держави на наступні десятиліття. Тому сьогодні дуже важливо, якою буде наша робота, на чому вона буде ґрунтуватись. Нам потрібен глибокий аналіз даних, нам потрібні ефективні консультації, діалоги, нам потрібна взаємодія із усіма зацікавленими стейкхолдерами. Фактично, подальше впровадження в національну систему принципів належного врядування і створення ефективних державних органів. Одним із таких рішень чи викликів, напевно, з яким ми стикаємося сьогодні, це найважливіший елемент нашої успішної європейської інтеграції. І фактично це мова і про проведення оцінювання державного управління України, теж неабияк може допомогти нам в цьому, оскільки ми реально за результатами цього опитування, як і минулого разу, коли була оцінка Сігма, ми будемо визначати наші подальші кроки нашого подальшого розвитку, а також нашого післявоєнного відновлення. Тому вкотре я буду дякувати і всім учасникам, які зараз знайшли час і можливість сьогодні бути тут, долучитися до сьогоднішнього заходу. І щиро дякую нашим партнерам Сігма, OECD, оскільки реальна допомога і сьогоднішній семінар – це таке логічне і продовження тижня Європи, і, напевно, скажу так, і це буде логічне завершення нашого сьогоднішнім заходом. Ми завершимо тиждень Європи в Україні. Я бажаю всім плідної співпраці, впевнена, що кожен із нас також отримає багато нової корисної інформації. Я щиро дякую, передаю слово модератору. Дякую.
Дякую, пані Льошина. It is always good to hear you speaking, because it is not only the optimism that you are conveying to everybody, but it is also a realistic view on the challenges that you are facing and that you still need to overcome. But definitely for Sigma team, it is always good to work and a pleasure to work with the Ukrainian public administration, because we see this very positive willingness to change things and to build a better public administration. For this, a very big thanks from our side, and really our honest admiration on what you are doing during the times of war. Now, let us go to Gregor Virant, the head of the Sigma program, who will be starting today's discussion, seminar, workshop on why the assessments of public administration really matter, why they are important, how they can help the countries build better public administrations, understand the challenges, but also recognize the successes. Gregor, the floor is yours.
Дуже дякую, Мартине. Доброго ранку всім. Я дуже радий бачити, що сьогодні теж вас є дуже багато, як вчора. I would like first to pick up on this very interesting introduction made by Natalia. Namely, we really consider it admirable that even in these very difficult circumstances, in the middle of war, you are still continuing your reforms, not only in the area of public administration, but also in other areas. This is really something amazing. We all understand how difficult this is. And of course, we also understand that we cannot expect huge progress during this time, because now your priorities are elsewhere. You have to win the war, you have to defend and secure your freedom. And after the war, there will be plenty of time to continue with the reform at an even greater pace. And this is one thing. And the other thing I wanted to say, and I always at every occasion reiterate it, is that accession to the European Union, this process of accession, is something that impregnates the whole public administration. It is not just a matter of one ministry or one government office. It is not just a matter of small teams in ministries who are specialized for European affairs. It is something that has to do with practically with every ministry, with every agency, almost, I would say, with every civil servant. Because the European acquis communautaire, as we call it, the European legal order, exists almost in all areas. So everywhere, in all areas of public administration, you have to harmonize your national legal order with the European legal order, and then you also have to implement these laws. And of course, in the future, once you become a full member of the European Union, you will also... could you just please mute yourself? Because we are hearing you too loudly. What I wanted to say is that once you are a full member of the European Union, you will participate in the decision-making process, and to participate in the decision-making process, all your ministries, all your teams of civil servants will have to be ready, to be proactive, to be agile, and of course to be knowledgeable in European affairs. So this is why I always say that EU accession is a matter of everyone in public administration. Basically, everybody has to change, everybody has to learn, everybody has to understand these things. But now going back to the topic that was assigned to me again, which is today, which is the importance or the significance of the Sigma assessments, of the so-called Sigma assessments. Well, I've already spoken about that a little bit yesterday. I don't want to repeat myself too much. Let me just repeat that when we do our assessments, we do it against the principles of public administration. Our assessments are not, we are not doing it over a rule of thumb. We use a very solid framework of standards and indicators to assess the state of play in various areas of public administration reform. How do we do it? The final product of our assessment is always a monitoring report. So for each country where we perform the assessment, we come up at the end with a monitoring report. And this monitoring report contains the indicator values, the values of all the indicators by principles, the values of all the sub-indicators. We come up with a storyline, with a narrative. We describe the situation in each of the areas: civil service, service delivery, policy making, public financial management, and so on. And we come up with recommendations. And recently, we have started to track the implementation of our recommendations. We hadn't been doing it before. Actually, we started exactly in Ukraine. Ukraine was the first case, the first country where Sigma systematically started to track, what is going on with our recommendations. Are they being implemented? Has the implementation at least started, and so on. And then we did it also for all other countries. So we now have a very good overview how it is going. And when we come next time, we always first look at our previous recommendations and see whether they are still valid, whether things have improved, or there is still work to be done. There are a lot of players in this process of assessments, namely, the national public administration institutions play a very important role because you are the ones, the national institutions are the ones who provide the data. Our assessments are data-based, are evidence-based. We have to collect a lot of data in all areas, and these data are basically provided by the national institutions. Then we engage local experts in the country where we are performing assessment. We engage the local experts to be a kind of link between the national institutions and ourselves, to support the institutions, to answer the questions, to help them collecting the data, to upload the documents on our information system, and so on. We also engage international experts, and of course, at the end, there's a Sigma team. For each of the areas, there is one Sigma assessor, one Sigma staff member who is responsible for an area. For example, for the area of accountability or civil service or service delivery. The main tool that we use, we have a very nice tool, a very nice information system that we use, and it's called PAR-IS, Public Administration Reform Information System. All the data are uploaded and all the documents are uploaded on this tool. There are questionnaires and all the questions are answered on this tool. And on this tool, we also have the so-called assessment sheets where we allocate the points for individual indicators. And for each indicator, we also provide, for each indicator value, we also provide a justification or an explanation. Why did we decide to give, for example, 1 point out of 2 or 0 points, and so on. And the process is very open in the sense that we always consult with the national authorities, with the national institutions on the content of our report. We open the report at some point to the government, to the institutions, and we also open the assessment sheets. So the government institutions can see all the scores and can also see the justifications. And then, of course, you can provide submit your comments, and we discuss those comments. The final decision is ours, of course, because we are also responsible for the quality of the report, but we really try to listen to your arguments, and it happens from time to time that we also change the indicator values or change the narrative, change the formulations in the report based on the comments. So you can see that this is really a very comprehensive, a heavy process, a rather time-consuming one, a rather resource-consuming one. We do our monitorings or our assessments against the principles periodically. And the main purpose, I think I mentioned it already yesterday, is to provide good information, evidence, both to the government and to the European Commission, which is then useful in planning the reforms of public administration, in implementing the reforms, also an information for the European Commission for their progress reports on the countries, for the policy dialogue between the governments and the European Commission. It's basically the main source of information on how governments are doing, on how candidate countries are doing in the area of public administration report. Now, these reports are mainly interesting for the European Union, but don't forget that we are a part of the OECD. And I have no doubt whatsoever, that the Ukraine report will be of much interest also for the OECD. Because Ukraine is very, very high on the list of priorities of the OECD for obvious reasons, because you are defending the values that are core values of the OECD member states, freedom, rule of law, individual liberty. You are protecting all this against the dictatorship, against tyranny, against aggression. This is why you are very high on the list of priorities. And also you are now a prospective member of the OECD. You have applied for the membership, and you have a perspective of becoming a full member of this club of countries which share those values of the free world. We perform our assessments periodically. The first assessment based on the principles of public administration was carried out in the Western Balkans in 2015. Then we did it again in 2016 and in 2017, and then a partial assessment of some areas in 2019, and then again a full assessment in 2021. All countries of the Western Balkans. You have 5 candidate countries there and 1 potential candidate. In the Eastern Partnership countries, we did the assessment in Moldova in 2015, and we did Ukraine and Georgia in 2018, Armenia in 2019, and we did a little bit of assessment just in one area, that service delivery in Morocco. So we are not doing it much in the south, but in the east, you see that we are doing it mostly in the countries which have European integration ambitions or perspective. In Ukraine, we did our baseline assessment, as we call it. So the first one, the baseline in 2018. I have to mention that we didn't do it in all areas. We skipped the area of public financial management. We did it in all other 5 areas, but not public financial management. This year, now, we are doing it in all 6 areas. So in a way, in public financial management, it will be a baseline assessment, and in the other areas, it will be an update of the assessment in 2018. And Martin will tell more about the details of our assessment this year, but one thing that I consider very important is that we will take into account the situation as it is now during the war, but we will also look at the situation just before the war, at the end of 21, which will enable us to see what progress you made from 2018 to end of 21, and then what was the impact of the war on the situation in public administration. I will not enter into details of our findings in various areas. I would just like to say maybe a word on each area very, very briefly. In strategic framework, what we found is that all the strategic documents, the public administration reform strategy and action plans are in place. Also, the coordination and monitoring structure is in place. So that is all fine. There is clear responsibility, also political responsibility. The problem is that the planning is very unrealistic. So you tend to plan overly, to make overly ambitious plan, which then you don't implement. And the problem is usually also costing. So the plans and the action plans are not accompanied with a clear and precise calculation of the costs. In policy planning and policy development, we found that all legislative and institutional setup is in place. There are overlapping responsibilities, for example, for regulatory impact assessment. There are multiple players in this area. It would have to be consolidated in the center of government. There are problems with the implementation of the standards of policy making and so on. And there is a very specific Ukraine-specific situation whereby a very, very high share, an unusually high share of draft laws is submitted to Verkhovna Rada, not by the government, as is usually the case in the EU member states, but by the members of parliament themselves. What we encounter often is also that some government ministries, instead of going through government procedures and submitting the draft law through the government, go directly to MPs and submit the draft laws through the MPs and so on. This is quite unusual. And we also identified 2 weak links between policy planning and budget planning. In public service and HRM, the legislative and institutional framework is in place. You have a well-functioning agency in place. You have the law on civil service in place. However, here too, we identified problems with implementation. We identified absence of HR planning, and there is still the HR information system after all this year is still not in place. You are starting to implement it. And of course, the big problem which still exists, and the National Agency of Civil Service is trying to resolve it through a draft law which has been submitted to the Parliament through the Council of Ministers, namely the problem of salary system for the civil service, where there are a lot of issues, a lot of problems. One of them being that being the structure of salary, whereby the share of variable pay linked, associated with managerial discretion is excessively high, unusually high. The European standard is that, the bulk of the salary is fixed and predictable, and only a small share then can be paid additionally for performance. In other terms, your basic salaries will have to be largely increased and the share of variable pay will have to be decreased. In organization and accountability, we found sound macro-organizational architecture without the problem that is encountered in many other countries, which is the mushrooming of agencies, the excessively high number of agencies. In Ukraine, this is not a problem. Your number of central executive bodies is within, I would say, normal framework. However, there is important absence of performance and accountability framework for central executive bodies. What do I mean here? The relation between the ministry and central executive bodies. According to the international standards, the agencies, the central executive bodies, have to be managed by objectives. Clear objectives have to be set, and then the agencies have the autonomy, the managerial autonomy, to achieve these objectives, and their performance is monitored and measured against these objectives. This does not exist in Ukraine. Instead of this kind of approach, your ministries engage too much in micromanaging the agencies, the central executive bodies. On oversight, your strong point is access to public information. I think this is an achievement of the revolution of dignity and your very strong civil society. You have a good law, which is also well implemented, except for appeal procedure and the supervision over the access to public information. You have quite fast administrative justice, which is not the case in most of other candidate countries, but the public trust in oversight institutions and courts is still very, very low. Your strong area is definitely the service delivery, where you established a number of centers for delivery of administrative services, simplified many procedures. Even already in 2018, we have identified positive developments in digital government. Of course, since 2018, you have made a huge progress in this area. In 2018, a deficiency was absence of law on administrative procedure, setting the basic legal standards for the interactions between the public administration on one side and citizens on the other. Now you have adopted this law, and it remains, of course, to be implemented. That was very briefly, in a few words, our main findings back in 2000. Let's see what this year's assessment will show, what kind of changes we will encounter. That would be all from my side. Martin, thanks, and back to you.
Thanks a lot, Gregor. You can stop sharing the screen, and mega thanks from my side for telling the full story, as it will make my presentation a little bit easier. With this, I would like, without any further delay, to go a little bit deeper than what Gregor was telling, and explain you some of the reasons why the assessment is being done this year, how it is being approached in terms of the process organization and in terms of the timeline. And then later, my colleague Jesper Jonsson will be speaking about very practical tools on how we gather the information and data. He will be showing our IT system. Many of you, I guess, already know it because you have been providing quite a lot of information, and we are very grateful actually to Ukrainian civil servants who were providing all of the required information to us. And then later, Jesper will also show how you can actually start playing with the data portal to understand all of the key challenges and missing points that Gregor was so well explaining in his narrative, but on the data portal, you will be definitely able to see it much better and for yourself. This slide represents the overall logic that Gregor was speaking about our assessments. First and foremost, we have our principles, and the principles are the basic layer of how we see good governance. It tries to define the values, the key concepts, and also sets the expectation bar towards the public administration of all of the countries. Then we have the methodology, the methodological framework on how we actually measure these principles, how we can ensure that there is enough evidence base behind our assessments so that we can really prove what we are saying. So if Gregor was saying that there is no costing in majority of your sector strategies, then we are measuring how many activities in your sector strategies or in your public administration reform strategy, for example, are actually costed. How many of them actually understand the volume of the money needed to implement the particular action. This is just an example. So that's the methodology, really setting out and explaining the logic on how we measure things. And last but not least, it is those two previous publications actually result in the assessment report itself, where sadly enough, majority of the countries and majority of the cases, quite a lot of attention is paid to numerical values of our indicators. Well, this is understandable because it's quantitative and it is allowing you to actually compare yourself with other countries. But equally important is the narrative part, and even more importantly, the recommendations parts, because this is setting out the essence of what we had seen in each country in terms of the key issues. 2018 baseline measurement report in Ukraine was actually, I would say, one of the success stories, both for us and also for you, because we see that it actually has helped all of the responsible and relevant institutions to make use of it, not just to have the assessment and put it somewhere on the shelf and then forget until the next time, but you were actually using it for updating the public administration reform strategy first, and then also the current PAR strategy is largely based on the same principles and also involves the thinking about the unimplemented recommendations on how to better address them. We already said yesterday that, and also today, Gregor mentioned that it didn't cover the public finance management and public procurement parts. So this year, for these areas, it will be the baseline measurement. And I'm quite sure that all of the relevant ministries, especially the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Economy, also the Accounting Chamber of Ukraine, Ministry of Economy in terms of the public procurement, will be finding our views and recommendations relevant and important. What is very important to note that already back in 2007, when the assessment was agreed, Ukraine chose not a lighter version that was specifically designed for the European neighborhood countries, but Ukraine chose the methodology meant for the pre-accession countries. meaning that already at that time, there was a very clear signal going on that Ukraine wants to go for a full-fledged European integration process. And that was the reason why you chose to be assessed against the higher bar of the indicators and principles. Gregor already told that at the request of the EU delegation to Ukraine and the European Commission, we followed up on the implementation of our recommendations both in 2020 and also 21. Sadly enough, we were not able to carry out this in 22 due to the start of the war, but it actually showed that Ukraine is actively moving forward with implementation of a number of our recommendations. And actually, we are very much looking forward to this year's assessment as we hope to see further progress achieved also during the 22. I will not be going deep into explaining the things that Gregor was so well explaining in terms of what we found during the 2018, but I want to indicate just two very significant changes, I think, where you managed to take into account our recommendations. First of all, it is regarding the strategic framework of public administration reform, where the Secretariat of the Cabinet of Ministers has drastically increased the quality of the relevant strategy, also the monitoring of the implementation system of the strategy, and thanks to a good cooperation with the Ministry of Finance, there is also not only costing available for the actions, but also a very clear interlinkage with the annual budget. Of course, it is only one particular case of one particular strategy, but we definitely are sure that with time also it will be implemented much wider. And then the second thing that is really the highlight of the Ukrainian success is the service delivery area, where you had approved the law on administrative procedure, where the Ministry of Justice, together with the Secretariat, together with the colleagues from the Verkhovna Rada, are actually very actively, despite the war, very actively working on the actual implementation of the law to make sure that all of the principles of good provision of service delivery are actually not only embedded in the regulations, but are also actually followed in practice. And then I do not need to advertise for you the overall approach to service delivery, where the Ministry of Digital Transformation is doing amazing job in terms of providing digital services to Ukraine's citizens. I usually, when we start speaking about the assessment in Ukraine in 23, I usually get an answer: Martins, are you absolutely crazy? What kind of assessment can be done in a country at war? And this is a relevant question to be asked. However, at the same time, I have a very good explanation on the fact that it is actually not an ad hoc idea that was developed to make the things difficult for the Ukrainian public administration during the wartime, but there is actually a very strong demand from Ukraine to have this assessment, to have clear next steps seen in terms of the public administration reform, which is, as you yesterday heard, one of the four fundamentals of the European integration process, as seen by the European Commission. The assessment started discussion started well before the war. It all started in September 2020, when actually the work on the new power strategy, which is currently in force, was starting, because the colleagues from the Secretariat of the Cabinet of Ministers, colleagues from the Reform Delivery Office, colleagues from other relevant ministries, including, by the way, also civil society organizations, were saying how good it would be to have the Sigma assessment at hand, because then it would be much, much easier to understand what are the priority areas on which Ukraine needs to still improve vis-a-vis the European principles of public administration. The strategy was developed, the strategy was approved in July 21. And then the next time when we heard from Ukraine regarding the need to do the assessment was September 21, when we actually managed to get back to Kiev after the COVID limitations. And in all of the meetings we had with the top decision makers, including the Minister of the Cabinet of Ministers, Mr. Nemchinov, Minister of Justice, Mr. Malyoska, also the first Deputy Chairman of Verkhovna Rada, Mr. Kornienko, all of them said, dear Sigma, we would like to have the assessment in 2023. And at that point, we said, okay, no problem, we will do it. And then comes the February 24 of 2022, the war starts, huge aggression from the side of Russia, and all of our support efforts go into really making sure that the basics are there. However, we were very much, to a certain extent, also positively surprised that without even further discussions, the Ukrainian side itself decided to put the Sigma assessment in the draft Ukraine recovery plan that was presented during the Lugano conference. For us, it came as a surprise, and we definitely immediately went back to the relevant institutions in Ukraine asking, are you sure? Do you really need it? Maybe we can postpone it and do it later, but we always got a response, no, we need it. It was further reiterated in October 22 when we had a formal request letter that yes, Ukraine wants a Sigma assessment in 2023. And then already all of the process started moving forward with the European Commission agreeing to it, EU delegation supporting it, and also the Secretariat of the Cabinet of Ministers keep pushing us forward on this issue. What is the general approach towards this year's assessment? We definitely use the same methodology as was used for the 2018 baseline measurement assessment. So it means that all of the results that you will get this year will be fully comparable with the results you see in 2018. So you will be able to see on where you had improved, where the situation had gone down, etc. We will be tackling two scores or two indicator values. One, catching the situation before the start of the war, and the second, the situation basically as of now. Because we really want and think it would be only fair to tell a story on what progress was achieved by Ukraine since 2018 until the start of the war. So peacetime public administration reform successes, and then we want to measure what has been the actual impact of the war, whether that it has been totally negative, what are the areas which had had the biggest impact from the Russian aggression, and what are the areas that keep either improving or at least not losing the quality you managed to achieve before the war. And as I usually keep saying, I think it is super important to have this clear measurement of before the war and after the war situation. Sorry, during the war situation, to make sure that once it comes to the payment of the reparations from the side of the Russia, the aggressor, then you can really have evidence on how much money they owe you for the operations of the public administration during the wartime and the negative impacts the war started by Russia has actually made to you. We will try to keep our narrative very short because we know that nobody wants to read long documents, and we will try to combine this story of the before the war, the situation and the current situation, whereas all of our recommendations will be primarily focused only on advising you on what might be the key things that are required for the post-war recovery in terms of the public administration reform, public administration modernization efforts, so that you really can go along the European integration process as soon as possible. Last but not least, what is super important always to mention is very many of you, not all, but very many of you will be actually involved in the commenting stage on the report. Ukraine definitely has not only an opportunity, but I would even say an obligation to very carefully read all of the justifications that we put on the indicated values and also on what we write in our narrative part of the report, so that Ukraine feels confident that yes, the information provided in the report, in the assessment, really conveys the real situation. It is neither too positive, but is also not too negative vis-a-vis the real situation. Just for your understanding on how the two splits of the indicator values look like, for the 2021 scores, we look as 23rd of February 22 as the date of when we would publish the assessment. So we basically look back to the full year of the 21 on what was the situation, and for some selected indicators, we even look back to the situation in 2020. Whereas for the current 23 assessment, we really focus on what is the situation now. We look at the full year of 22 to see the negative impacts of the war, and for some indicators we might need to go back to the 2021 information. But really the key interest from our side is to clearly differentiate these two periods of the before the war and the wartime in order to really measure the success that Ukraine has managed to achieve before the war. Today, I'm the key speaker, but of course, the whole assessment team is much bigger. You'll see that there are very many colleagues on the first row of the slide that work for Sigma, that are part of the Sigma assessment team, meeting with you, asking for more information, asking for clarifications. We also have a team of dedicated international experts coming from the EU countries. And then last but not least, but equally important, we have a team of local Ukrainian experts who are assisting us and also sometimes you in ensuring that we get all of the right information, and you do not need to spend too much time in terms of providing us with data and documents. Later today, my colleague Jesper Jonsson will be speaking. He's the head of the data and measurement team, who is ensuring that we as sector professionals really can take care of the proper assessment, and we can really make sure that everything runs well and all of the methodological aspects of our approach are clearly observed. In terms of the timeline, I would say that it all started in beginning of February this year when we trained our local experts on the use of the IT system, when they started the pre-filling of publicly available documents. Then there was the training of our EU experts, and I would say the 6th of April is the real start of the assessment, when a lot of Ukrainian civil servants were formally engaged, where they heard us speaking about the things that you pretty much hear also today, when we were trying to explain our methodological approaches, but also expectations that we have from those people who providing us with the information. The Ukrainian side provided us with the initial answers, documents and data by end of April. We are currently working on analyzing all of the provided documents and data, and then pretty soon you will be seeing us again virtually for the interviews, where we will be going institution by institution, asking for some clarifications, asking to learn more on what is the real practice of how you apply the laws and regulations in your daily work, to understand not only what is written on paper, but to understand what is actually happening in reality. June will be very busy for us because we will be trying to write the report and also do all of the indicators. And we really aim to send off the draft report and also open the system for your check on indicator values on the 21st of June this year. This will be exactly the 2 weeks time for you to check and ensure that everything we had said in the report is right, and we haven't missed any important documents or nuances. And then in the beginning of July, when we receive back your feedback, we analyze it, we take into account as much as we can, and we professionally think is relevant. We will definitely come back to you with our responses to the comments that you would make. And then starting from the 14th of July, we would finalize the report and send it for professional editing. September, October is the time of the final consultations. Gregor already told that there is a huge interest, not only from Ukraine, but also from European Commission and also OECD, on looking into what is the real situation, what is happening right now, how the public administration looks like, and what are the key areas where any support might be needed. Of course, there will be the final consultations with Ukraine on the final version of the report, and then I'm very, very hopeful that in November 23 we will be seeing each other not virtually, but we will be seeing each other in Kiev for the presentation of the final version of the report and a discussion on what can be done further, to which recommendations you agree, to which you don't agree, to which you have arguments on why it should be approached differently, because it is always important to remember that there is no absolute truth. Every country has its own administrative culture, and sometimes there are cases where the universal solutions do not work, where you need a different approach for one reason or another. With this, I would like to end my intro on how we go along the assessment in Ukraine in 2023. I hope that it was understandable, and then give the floor actually to my colleague Jesper Jonsson, who will then take you through and show the inner details of our PAR-IS system on where we collect the data, but also later provide you with the information on the assessment results, and also then show you, I would say, probably the most interesting part of the thing that he and his team has done, the data portal, where you can actually already now go and start playing with the policy simulations on what would be the situation in Ukraine if we would have a certain aspect implemented. I thank you for the attention, and Jesper, I hope you are with us and you are ready to take over the floor.
Thank you, Martins. I'm indeed here, fully ready, and it's a real pleasure to meet, I think, many of you again from yesterday, but also new people, I hope. So I will continue along the vein. So Gregor, Martins have outlined some of the key findings, the key steps. My job is to take you behind the scenes, so both the back end, but also the front end, as Martin said, in terms of the public portal we have. That you can already access, but maybe you didn't know it existed. So we can share the link for that. But also the back end, showing you how the data collection works. And maybe just quickly to link it to yesterday's session. The main reason, I mean, yesterday I talked about what makes a good governance indicator, what makes a good indicator that can actually, in some level of credibility, measure the quality of public administration. It's a very hard thing to do. I talked about our main design features being around mixed methods, being about primary data, being about actionable steps in the process that can then lead to actionable recommendations to the different actors within the public administration that actually make the tangible change. So not a focus on an overall very generic assessment of, is Ukraine better than this or that country, but actually within the public administration, what are the strong points, what are the weak points, because that exists in all countries. How can we improve? What are the actual steps to improve? I think everyone wants to achieve that, but it's hard to do. And it's definitely never accomplished with a very generic approach, which exists in some areas of measurement where you would have a simple questionnaire with a million questions along an ordinal scale that is then sent to one person within the administration, and that person will have to respond in terms of access to information, public procurement, and of course that doesn't work. But that is why we built this system, to actually be able to engage all the specialists, all the public servants within Ukraine that sit on the information, that hold the information, that are the data providers, and can then have that direct interaction with our, Martins showed, different professional teams who are each specialists in all these areas. And that requires a system. That requires a system that is not a survey questionnaire. It's actually an online collaboration platform where you can have this exchange, upload of data, etc. So that was just the kind of rationale for why I would like to now show you our system. And it should show on your screen now. Martins, if it doesn't, then you let me know. So basically here, I have a little dashboard. I can see how far we are in terms of the two questionnaires, assessment sheets we see for Ukraine. As Martin said, we actually retrospectively collect data for 2021. Then it has a questionnaire, which I will show you now. I will not show you the actual questionnaires that we have going on for Ukraine, because out of principle, this is a closed space. We still have 70 registered users, which are your colleagues from the public administration in Ukraine, which can then I will show you there's an even broader layer of data providers around that. But these are the people that have actually access to the real questionnaires. You can see them up here. This is a training version of them. But in a sense, it's a classic questionnaire, but it's structured around the themes that by now you will know are the Sigma and the European Commission areas of public administration. But going into some of the questions, it will give you a sense of how we work, very evidence-based, very concrete, and how we ask for information. So here, for example, when we get into the area of administrative justice, we're asking to provide us with the number of first instance court judges, second instance court judges, third instance court judges, and then the legal assistants. And for each of those in the real questionnaire, you will see that there's an attachment. Let's see here, we're asked to add an attachment. So the actual administrative data file to substantiate this number here. And that is the number that we then validate and we populate in the assessment sheet, which I will show you later. There are also more qualitative type of questions. Let me see if I go further down here. Please provide the laws regulating the right to access to legal aid. So again, here you provide a response, you add an attachment, you save it, and then you submit it to Sigma. And Sigma will eventually validate the question, and this is our workflow. Then the system generates an update of the progress, and that is how we're actually able to collect over 1,000 documents from 70 registered users in Ukraine over a very, very short period of time, because this is like a decentralized way of managing all this information. So there is another very nice feature, which is send question to colleague. Here, it enables your colleagues who are registered users in the system to even reach the second tier of data providers. So the person that is responsible specifically for the human resource management information system, he or she doesn't need to be actually registered. This is often more the generic focal point in the ministry. But you can send direct requests for that data to this person by singling out that one or two questions out of our many questions that is required. So that's the basic features of the questionnaire. As you can see, it's a bit of a more advanced version of the questionnaires that you will know, and it's more of a collaborative online platform than the typical questionnaires that you would know. And it has no start and end date. It has, for each question, it has a workflow where we can work with you, because some data is easy to get, some data is not easy to get. We also pre-fill some of the data, and that enables us to move as fast as possible for each area. You can export the questionnaire to Word, which was a feature we developed because many officials came to us and said this requires discussion within the ministry. Some people are not comfortable opening the browser during a meeting, and you can then export the questionnaire. So that's how it looks. We ask for this information. We ask for the supporting evidence. We analyze it. Then we go here to the assessment sheets. Here I can actually show you the real one, because we're not there yet. We're in the data collection phase. So going to Ukraine 2023. This is actually the sheet that we will be populating. And you can see I showed you the link to the methodology yesterday. This is the direct replica of the methodological framework that Martin's also showed you. It's just a bit deeper in terms of making sure that we're consistent across countries, across assessors, in how we apply these quite detailed specifications. So you can see here, okay, why was Sigma asking about numbers of judges, the number of legal assistants? is because within the accountability area, within the composite indicator of fairness in handling administrative judicial disputes, there are certain sub-indicators. These sub-indicators are composed of various criteria. And if I dive and go deeper and deeper into the methodology, if I dive into how well the organization of judges handling administrative justice cases happens, you will see a replica again of our methodology, and you will see that we make it very explicit that there needs to be at least a 1-to-1 ratio of legal assistance per judges across the administration. And that is why we ask for this data. So there are no requests that are just for fun. They're all linked to, fulfilling one of the thresholds. And if we see this data is consistent and fulfills the methodology, we would tick this box here. It would provide a point to the methodology, and we will cite the data source. This is the job of Martins as the lead in the area, provide a clear justification that the Ukrainian administration can then review. Yes, this is the data we provided. This is accurate. We have an option here, which is very useful. It was very useful during COVID and also now in a war situation where we unfortunately cannot visit. We will have our validation online. So you were able to provide comments for each of these, and we were able to respond and have a very good dialogue about fact-checking the various indicators here. So that's the essence of the system. As you can see, it enables us to process each source of information quite rigorously. And it gives us a very it's a manual for us, it's a manual for our experts, and it's a way for you to be able to fact check us. So it's not about us saying, well, you don't have enough legal assistance. We applied very consistently what is the threshold across the different countries. So that is PAR-IS. That is the information data collection system. You will see that there are other features here in terms of reporting and libraries, but these are the main ones. So if we move on, I wanted to show you here. This is our web page where you can see all the information on the monitoring tab here. All the information about our monitoring work. You can see the link to the principles. You can see the link to the methodological framework, our monitoring reports that Martin's mentioned. So if you want to find any of this information, it's here. Of course, the data portal, I will get to it now. The link is here, and the subpage of the data portal on the policy simulator equally here as well. So let me move on to the data portal. This is another way of showing the findings, so that we like to have the words complement the numbers and the numbers complement the words. So you had the words now in terms of what are the strengths and weaknesses of Ukraine in 2018. Where can we improve? Where we're standing quite strong. This is like the visual way of presenting that in terms of indicator values. It automatically loads on the Western Balkans. We go to Ukraine, take the latest values, and whoops, we see the scores. It's from 0 to 5, 5 being the highest score. Unfortunately, as mentioned, public financial management is blank, but it will be fully nicely filled by the end of this new assessment. So you'll be able to go and see the old values with the new values. You can compare here against the old and the new. And of course, if you want, you can also go and compare against other countries. But it gives you a very good at-a-glance view. You can see in the past, we had quite low values here on financial sustainability of PAR. According to what Martin's just said, a lot of work has gone into this. So we want to see this line moving up here, which I think it will. So that's going to be a very positive message. We can see here, center of government functions were already very strong. So we want to definitely keep that and not have a regression in the indicator values. Okay, I move down to here, quality of policy planning. This was what Gregor mentioned. You can see the indicator values quite low, so there's some room for improvement. So this is how the radar works. When you move through, okay, alignment of national policy planning with the EU integration. That is something definitely to focus on for the future. Another one that has been mentioned also yesterday and today is on remuneration. So the law on salaries. And again, you can see the indicator values are very consistent with the main messages that that Gregor was sending here. And you can see this one over here in terms of fair and efficient administrative procedures. It's about back in the 2018 assessment, having no law on administrative procedures in place in Ukraine. So this is the overview. This is the bird's eye view. If we want to go into one of them and actually know a little bit more about what is missing, what can we improve, you basically just go into the radar, click on one of these lines, boom, and it takes you to the composite indicator. So I chose accessibility of public information. It's a very common thing. All citizens want to have good access to information. And it illustrates what I was talking about yesterday as well, about the results chain. So we try to cover both the legislative framework, in this case, the law on access to information, and the institutional framework. In this case, whether there is a central body responsible for overseeing and monitoring the implementation and collect data in terms of sanctioning and refusals for access to information. So this is all covered here. But then also very quickly moving to practice. So do public websites actually disclose the necessary data? Here, you can see you're doing very well. Also in 2018, are some key central data sets actually published? And finally, triangulating, if you remember the session from yesterday, looking at citizens' views. So how happy are citizens with the actual level of access to information, and the same for businesses. So it gives you, of course, never perfect in terms of indicators, but a quite reasonable triangulated view of access to information situation in Ukraine. Okay, but then with the law on access to information, what is missing according to Sigma? Okay, so you click further, and you can see here these specific criteria that we have defined. They are down here. Okay, we can see in Ukraine in 2018, information holders were not required to provide information in the requested format. So as a citizen, I cannot ask you to give me the information in a certain format. And there is no right to appeal to an independent body. You did not have an information commissioner, for example, established that would give citizens an adequate right to appeal against refusal for applying for access to information. So these are this is what I call kind of quite actionable, concrete steps that can be improved by the administration. And we are very specific about what we're asking. Here you can, if you want, you can go and see what the situation is in other countries that we've assessed. Okay. I'll give you another example. If we move into, to go back to Ukraine. We go into the data sets. As a very positive example, we have a predefined list of data sets that we check against in all countries. I think these are very kind of meaningful data sets that any citizen would like to see. Public land registry, company registry, public procurement tenders, the government annual work plan, national statistics on GDP. And we basically count the fulfillment rate of these, and you can see that Ukraine is doing very, very well. The only one, which is admittedly the bonus point, which we don't require for all countries to have, and you can even see that it's not yet fulfilled. For 10:30, yes. For 10:30. I have until 10:30. Sorry, 11:30.
11:30.
Apologies for that. So salaries of senior civil servants is not there, but you will see that the threshold is still set, so you get maximum points because it's out of a total. So this is how you see the actual data, but then, as Martin said, many people like to predict and forecast and say what happens now, and this is all data, how is the situation actually changing? If we go back here, we can see, if I go to accountability of fairness in handling of administrative disputes, it's the same data, but if I expand here, I can actually play around with the ticks. So moving down here, which ones didn't I fulfill? This one, the statutory level of fees is actually a barrier, and according to our definition, it's 8% of an average salary. So it creates a barrier to access to information. So if you lower the fees, boom, you would get full points here. I think an even bigger problem, though, however, is further down. And that's about, well, there is no electronic case management system. We also saw that judges don't actually have an adequate level of legal assistance, but that's easy. We just hire them. So boom, I tick this box. But it's about independent of the judiciary by citizens. You can see it's quite a low level of satisfactions by citizen. We just ran a survey across the population, a representative survey, which, and I cannot give you the results yet, but it will be in the report, and it will definitely, look here, push this rate up, and the more positive, the more points, up until a threshold that we've defined here based on EU average. And you can see that now you are getting full points. So that's how the simulator works. You can go in and you can go back and you can see, okay, now suddenly the indicator value for administrative justice has increased by 1. It makes a little dent in the area average here, as you can see. So I think it's a really useful tool, both for the administration to see what improvements needs to be made, but also for any citizen to go and make recommendations to the public administration themselves, see what is missing according to standards. So, thank you. I will see if I can stop sharing.
Thanks a lot, Jesper, for showing off both the PARAS and the policy simulator. Dear colleagues, Jesper, sadly enough, will have to leave us very, very soon. As you probably noticed, we have a fight in our offices for the nice meeting rooms. So in case you have any question about the policy simulator or the actual work of the PARAS, you have now basically 5 to 7 minutes to ask Jesper whatever you want to learn, or maybe you have some question about the methodology itself. I don't see any hands up. No, there are no hands up, Jesper. You've done again a great job in terms of explaining everything. Так. Yes, пан Швардак.
Доброго дня. Дуже гарно дякую за ваше чудове представлення, але я би хотів запитати дещо про майбутнє. Бо, в принципі, аналітика – це моє хобі дороги, і мені дуже подобається все, що зв'язане з даними. Тому хотілося запитати, те, що я побачив, воно більше схоже на вивідну аналітику. Чи ви передбачаєте в майбутньому прогностичну, тобто на основі машинного навчання, якісь рекомендаційні системи і щось таке подібне, щоб люди не тільки бачили, що їм не вистачає, а в принципі, щоб якось пропонувалося ті чи інші можливості вирішення, тобто покрокові, бо на даний момент дуже багато в Європі і в Америці робиться для того, щоб машина допомагала людині приймати правильні і ефективні рішення. І друге питання, як ви дивитеся на те, що бо в нас зараз, дякуючи пані Наталі, є шикарний курс по англійській мові для державних службовців. Чи не варто для державних службовців такий же шикарний курс запропонувати в плані дата-грамотності і, в принципі, розвитку методологічних основ в аналітиці, щоб люди були більш підготовлені і більш використовували сучасні технології і підходи для того, щоб ми стали ефективними і досягали успіху в цій царині. Дякую.
Thank you very much. Very interesting, and I fully agree, and that's part of the mission, is to make all this data as available as possible. There is some parts of the database that will remain closed because this is a conversation with the administration, but I think compared to other evaluators, we then share quite a lot. There are some analytical methods that we don't use because of the way that we need to make very sure of being very credible in our assessment. So let's say web scraping, we actually go and take the actual websites and we check them one by one. Typically these methods are also used as a way to as a proxy. Yeah, so it's always a matter of how much we can rely on the proxies, and at the end of this process, when the question of EU integration and EU membership is raised, Sigma will have to stand by, and we cannot rely on some quite alternative methods here. So the simulator is kept very, very simple. There's no algorithm behind. It's really mechanical, as you said, in terms of whether each of these 1,000 steps towards a very, very good public administration system, whether they are fulfilled or not. I think it could be a very interesting kind of another version of trying to come up with let's say an assessment page that wouldn't end up in any indicator values that would be used by the European Commission, but more a little bit lighter version, where we could project more and without doing the full assessment. And I think the results would be useful, would be maybe not as precise, but good enough for the administration to use on a regular basis. So thank you.
Thanks a lot, Jesper, for answering. Before I give the floor to Ms. Alyoshina to answer on her side, I just wanted to add that thanks a lot, Mr. Švardak, for the question. I completely agree with you that the training on data analytics, use of the data, understanding of the data would be super relevant for the Ukrainian civil servants, because in my primary professional area, which is policy development and coordination, I see that you would definitely benefit from a deeper understanding, not you personally, but the Ukrainian public administration, for deeper understanding on what sources of the data you have, which are trusted, what you can correlate, what you can extrapolate, etc., etc. So that's definitely a very good suggestion, and I put it down. I will also convey the message to the European Commission. On the methods like forecast, we had a super good workshop with the National Bank of Ukraine and Secretariat of Cabinet of Ministers back in January this year, where our colleagues from OECD were giving some tips and tricks on use of strategic foresight method. And if you are interested in that, I would definitely suggest you go to the website that is called Observatory of Public Service Innovation, where they had really gathered all of the different methods from different countries that the countries are actually using. You feel free to drop me an email, and I can even get you in contact with the relevant people there. But now the floor is up for
Дякую.
Ілюшина.
Дякую. Дякую щиро, Мартінс. Я дякую нашим колегам, які сьогодні і вчора відбули цей семінар, адже це ще одне свідчення того, що у нас є неабиякий попит. Багато хто знає і чує постійно Сігма, OECD. Тепер вони знають, що чим займається Сігма, що такі принципи державного управління, тобто в який спосіб ми реалізовуємо і підстраємося так само, як в основу ефективного державного управління. Сьогодні ми також розглянули і питання методології, те, про що щойно пан Роман задав запитання. Стосовно самої методології, методологічних основ програми Сігма, як їх застосовувати, ну і розширили рамку щодо самого розуміння. Питання оцінювання на сьогодні для нас буде вкрай актуальним. Ми всі чекаємо на співбесіди, на інтерв'ю, які будуть задля уточнень деяких моментів. Ми подали матеріали, завантажили, а тепер будемо чекати, коли прийде час для того, щоб пояснити, уточнити деякі незрозумілі моменти, або, можливо, навпаки, посилити наші позиції для більшого розуміння. Ну і фактично сьогоднішній день – це ще одне свідчення того, про наші наміри, євроінтеграційні наміри і про нашу єдність. Сьогодні тут представлені всі державні службовці і ті, хто безпосередньо займається формуванням політик і розробкою законодавчих актів. Тому я думаю, що для нас усіх сьогоднішній і вчорашній семінар, цей дводенний, так би мовити, невеличкий марафон, був змістовний. Я щиро дякую ще раз за підготовку цього марафону, за те, що ви долучилися сьогодні. Особливо важливо, ми завершуємо сьогодні тиждень Європи, який започаткували в Національному агентстві, і кожен день ми рушили якраз в контексті всіх європейських намірів наших, розглядали покроково ті аспекти, на яких ми маємо зараз робити акценти в нашому просуванні для отримання членства в Європейському Союзі. Тому щиро дякую нашим колегам, що знайшли час і що градус тримали, і що були весь цей час. У нас не понижується якраз кількість наших учасників. Тому, Мартінс, щиро дякую ще раз вкотре за вашу підтримку, допомогу і за те, що постійно поруч. Ну, за вашу людяність так само ви відгукуєтеся на всі наші запити. Тому з мого боку лише подяка і колегам бажаю всім гарного дня.
Дуже дякую. Гарного дня і слава Україні!
Героям слава!